Tennessee's Wild Side is a presentation of the Jackson Foundation.
Environmental problems in our oceans, from microplastics to mercury contamination or climate change, continue to make national news. And a combination of factors threatens to destroy the world's coral reefs that are counted on for the economy, the ecosystem, and even our health. It's no surprise that multiple agencies from the federal government are working to find a solution. But even landlocked entities like the Nashville Zoo are being marshaled in to help. Unique and living in natural geographic splendor, surrounded by colorful fish and other sea creatures. Large coral reefs have inspired a Tennessee couple to travel for the past 20-plus years to various shorelines around the world for scuba diving adventures. But Denny and Teresa Hemphill have witnessed a drastic decline in what initially drew them to places like Bonaire in the Caribbean islands.
The amount of fish and the diversity of the fish, it's not there. You can see what we have done to the oceans, especially stateside compared to overseas.
When I first started going to Bonaire, there were so many fish. You would go out there and you were inundated. I mean, they were everywhere. You felt like you were just swimming through this huge school of fish all the time. Now you see smaller schools of fish, and you don't see, you can be diving and you'll be in there and there's no fish at all.
That's because coral reef habitats for fish are dying. Coral may be among the most misunderstood natural resources on the planet.
I like to think of corals as plant rock animals.
I think that you and I are of a similar generation, and that when you used to play that game, animal, mineral, or plant, and you're trying to guess what it was, well, corals are kind of all three of those things.
As unusual as that sounds, coral reefs play three-part harmony in the ecosystem and the economy. Reefs provide a place to live for other ocean life, which creates a great place for fishing, while being a barrier for shorelines in severe weather, and offering underwater sightseeing tourism opportunities in coastal communities. Here at the Nashville Zoo, marine biologist Chad Cockburn is part of a coral conservation effort.
When you see lots of corals, you're not going to see just corals. You're going to see all kinds of small fishes, big fishes. You can see octopus. I mean, you can see all kinds of really cool critters. And so when it comes to corals and divers, that's honestly just going down and seeing the magnificent structures that corals have created and everything else that's going on down there. It's absolutely incredible.
But now that's threatened by pollution and disease, while scientists say that most of the world's coral reefs are at risk.
35 years ago, the coral was everywhere. Plush. You go there now and it's not very plush. It's a lot of bleaching from heat. If you're a believer in global warming, coral is a very good indicator of what global warming has done to the coral. It bleaches it, takes the color out of it. Take the color out of the coral, then the fish don't have anything to eat. I mean, it's just one thing after another.
Among the experts trying to save coral is Jennifer Koss. She is director of the Coral Reef Conservation Program for NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration.
It's pretty serious. We've seen a lot of loss over the last several decades, and then current disease events, and then we most recently had a big climate-driven episode in Florida, and are seeing it also in the Caribbean, where the water's gotten very, very warm because of El Nino conditions, which causes a lot of stressed corals, and then they bleach because of this heat stress.
With projections that 70 to 90% of coral could be lost within the next 25 years, it's everyone to the rescue. The goal is to reproduce coral in scientifically controlled environments, such as the Nashville Zoo.
I think that a lot of zoos and aquariums know that they're showcasing essentially ambassadors from the animal world, and as part of that ability to bring knowledge and viewing these amazing animals in captivity, that there's a responsibility also to conserve those animals in the wild, and they have access to some of the best veterinarians and scientists. So a lot of behind the scenes work is happening in places like the Smithsonian and other places where they're doing captive breeding of a very few individuals of a certain endangered species to essentially be able to bring those animals and put them back out into the wild and regain those populations.
So we're going to use spirulina brine shrimp. It's going to be just small pieces of shrimp.
A species known as stony coral is being reproduced at the Nashville Zoo.
We do what's called target feeding. So we prepare our diets. We use different types of materials, different types of small foods that would be naturally found inside of the wild. We put the food right in front of them and they will catch it using their tentacles and nematocysts and then pull it into their mouths. We want to give our corals the best chance we can. We control the environment to simulate what they would naturally experience with lighting as well as flow and temperature and stuff like that.
Coral can reproduce by breeding with other coral or all on its own. The very existence of coral is a complex process.
When corals grow, they'll start as a single polyp and they will continue to expand and create their skeleton underneath it. So that's the cool thing about the stony corals, is they do secrete their own skeleton, so they actually get to build their structure as they're growing.
So it's a bunch of coral polyps all living together in the hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions, depending on how big the reef structure is.
But they have a relationship with this algae that lives inside of them that does provide them with about 80% of their nutritional requirements.
So it's really this amazing symbiotic relationship between a plant and an animal, and then that animal makes its own home. So it is in fact its own habitat, if that makes sense.
Not only is reproduction taking place in water tanks of zoos and aquariums, it's now actually being done on the ocean floor.
Now I know in Bonaire they're doing a lot of conservation. They are actually building little teepees, if you will, with pieces of coral on there to regrow the coral so that they can reinstitute it in various areas that are missing coral.
We really started that work in Florida and the Caribbean because that's where we were seeing the most damage, but now we're increasing that capacity in our Pacific Island areas, and then other countries. Australia has gotten very, very well informed and very good at doing restoration. So we can farm corals on land in aquarium, or we can farm them right in the water. You can call it a nursery or a farm or a garden. There's lots of different words for it, but we essentially take little teeny tiny corals and put them on structures and grow them out until they're big enough to actually then be planted out on the coral reef.
And coral's role in helping people should not be underestimated.
We fish them, we catch lobsters, we catch shrimp right off of these coral reefs. And on top of that, when you think about medicines that are derived from plants and animals, there's an awful lot of drugs that have been developed from either corals themselves or species that exist in coral reef areas. And that's sort of an untapped resource. We're just beginning to understand how to figure out how corals interact with their environment and how those chemicals and different interactions with other organisms can be used for medicines that could cure cancer.
And for the Nashville Zoo, the Coral Reproduction Program offers an additional opportunity for visitors.
The coolest thing about them being in Nashville is there are people that have never seen the ocean. They've never seen the reef. And so getting to come in here and see corals that would be found in the Florida Reef Tract without having to travel, it's one of the coolest things ever. There are a lot of people that don't know about corals. They think that they're just rocks. Or a lot of people don't know that there's a disease that's going through and really doing damage along the Florida Reef Tract. They don't really understand the importance of corals. And so getting to come here, getting that education, seeing these things firsthand, it really opens their eyes.
I think what saddens me the most is that I know what I've seen over this 20 plus years. It's what my children and grandchildren will never see, because they will never be able to see the huge number of fish in the ocean. They'll be able to swim through these huge schools of fish. It's so exciting when you are diving and you come upon this huge school of fish and you can just go through it and you watch them separate. I mean, it's kind of magical, and they'll probably never get to see that, which is really sad.